Welcome back. We're still with a researcher with Amnesty International Nigeria, Ms. Murayo Adebayo. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Well, let's now continue with looking at conflicts in the Northeast. You mentioned just before the break that sometimes you're even accused of underestimating the actuality on ground. So let's understand what or how deep in trouble are the IDPs or the victims?
It's a huge mess in the Northeast, and I think the figures that we've put out are bad enough, and I think anyone should be concerned about those figures already. So in terms of how deep it is, that's what we can say. The figures that we've put out are what we can say, and so what we would like to see is a situation where stakeholders come together to actually investigate how deep it is.
What do you mean by stakeholders?
Stakeholders will mean that the government, the civil society organizations, and even the rights holders, the victims.
How well are you working with civil society organizations?
In every aspect of our work, we try to always partner with civil society organizations, and I think that we've been doing that very well. I can't think of any aspect of our work that we don't have civil society partnerships on the ground. On housing rights, we partner with a number of local organizations in Port Harcourt, in Lagos, in Kaduna. Same thing for the corporate accountability, which is the oil spill in the Niger Delta. So we try to, because one of our organizational objectives is to support and strengthen local organizations, because as a global rights group, we are not always on ground when these things happen. So we will find ourselves, we will have a better situation where those who are on ground have the capacity to report, to investigate, and document these things. So it's very important for us to always partner with local organizations.
You see, because you mentioned that unlawful killings are also issues of serious concern for Amnesty International. Give us specifically the examples you're referring to.
So we have situations of unlawful killing in respect of the IMN. We have situations of unlawful killing in respect of the IPOB. We have situations of unlawful killing in respect of other instances that have resulted in some internal crisis or the other. And so what we are saying is that, and so we call these extrajudicial killings, so killings that are outside the law. And it's quite concerning. And majority of these have happened, some of these have happened just with the police, but majority of these have happened when the military has been involved. And we find that this is because the military is not trained to deal with civil unrest. And so they end up being very high-handed and use excessive force when they have to deal with these types of instances. And so we are calling for a situation where the police is equipped and helped to perform their task so that the military doesn't have to always step in these instances.
Now, away from that, just in conclusion, how do you intend to follow up on the Ogoni cleanup process?
So I mentioned earlier that we have partners on ground, and we also are on ground. And we have had several interactions with the Ministry of Environment and with NOSDRA, who are in charge of the process. And we continue to maintain that relationship and continue to follow up with our partners on ground to see what's going on, what improvements there have been, what action is being taken. And where we find that things have, if we find that things have dropped back a bit, then we come back again to putting some pressure. And also we continue to monitor the spills that happen in the region.
And so far, what have you found out?
What we have found out is that there is not enough strength on the side of government to hold accountable multinational companies in respect of the spills that happen. And for instance, in reporting spills, NOSDRA is the agency that is in charge of reporting these spills, but they have to rely on Shell, for example, to make that report. They have to rely on Shell to take them to the site of the spill. So their investigations are heavily dependent on these multinationals, and so therefore it cannot be impartial. Yeah.
So have you heard reports of some collaborations between the elders in the villages, in the communities, and perhaps companies like Shell, for instance, you know, collaborations or compromises and all of that, which make actual improvements impossible.
We've heard of that, and this is because after several decades of decay, it is unfortunately difficult for there to be that trust. In terms of the community have a difficulty trusting that the cleanup would actually happen, and so we find situations where they are compromising. But regardless
So you actually found situations of compromises then?
Sorry, we hear of these situations of compromising, but regardless of that, we're not saying that that's impossible, and we're not denying that that happens. Regardless of that, a cleanup needs to happen. And so the government needs to find a way to build that trust. And we see that they're making attempts and they're making efforts to build that trust, because the former Minister of Environment, before she left to the UN, we saw that she was making efforts to visit these communities and having these dialogues with them. And so we are hoping that that will yield results, because a cleanup needs to happen for that environment to be safe and to be one in which people can realize their human rights to clean environment, food, water, and sanitation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Morayo Adebayo, for coming on Dateline Abuja.
Thank you very much for having me.